Hey guys, it's Tori, and today I'm going to be doing a wrap-up of all of my 2020 goals. I will link down below my 2020 reading goals video as well as the mid-year check-in I did in June in case you're curious to follow along with me through these goals. I also won't be mentioning specifically the books that I read in the first half of the year because I already did that in my mid-year check-in. So if you're curious about what books I read the first half of the year for these goals, feel free to check that out. But I have successfully completed almost all my goals, and there's only one goal that I have not completed, but I only have one more thing to read for it, so I think I'll be able to do it by the end of December, and we'll just start with explaining what that goal was. So I plan to read 3 Shakespeare plays throughout the year. Specifically, I had chosen King Lear, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Julius Caesar, and Julius Caesar I have yet to read. However, I think that will only take me like 2 hours to get through, so in the next couple of weeks before the end of December I should be able to get to it. So I'm going to count, at least for now, that I have achieved that goal, and if in my December wrap up I don't end up getting to it, I will mention that there. But yeah, so far I've done well with that. I did read King Lear and A Midsummer Night's Dream in the first half of the year, so you can look elsewhere for my thoughts on it. But suffice it to say, I did really enjoy both of those plays, and I'm excited to get to Julius Caesar hopefully by the end of this month. The second goal I want to discuss is my goal to read at least one over 1,000-page classic each year. I've been doing this for a few years now, and this year I was able to accomplish that by reading The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, and I ended up giving that book 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it, and I'm so glad I finally picked it up. I've heard so many good things, and I just found that they were all true. I really love the characters in that story. I found it to be a very interesting revenge story, and one that I'll definitely return to in the future. I also was able to read another over 1,000-page classic that I wasn't planning on reading, but due to a scholarship application I wanted to fill out, I had to read this book, and that was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, which I ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars. Definitely did not love as much as The Count of Monte Cristo, but I did see value in it, and there's actually a character in that book that I'm going to mention in my favorite characters of the year, because he was fabulous to read about. So I did like aspects of it, but definitely not like a favorite by any means, but it was enjoyable, and I'm glad I read it because it gave me a lot to think about. The third goal I'm going to go over is my reread goal. I had planned to reread 4 specific books throughout the year. I did reread more than that, but there were 4 that I really wanted to prioritize, and I did get through them all. So in the first half of the year, I read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which I believe I gave 3 out of 5 stars, maybe 4 out of 5 stars, but didn't love it as much as I did when I was younger. But there was definitely nostalgia, and there was definitely some good things about it. It was entertaining. And then I also reread Emma by Jane Austen and really loved that one. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and it was just as wonderful as the first time I read it. And then in the second half of the year, starting in July, I reread Circe by Madeline Miller, and I ended up giving that 5 out of 5 stars. I love that book so much, and it was even more enjoyable this time because I've been able recently to study more of the Greek myths involved in this story, and so I was able to be a lot more engaged and understand a lot of the characters and their backgrounds a lot more, which I really found enjoyable. It's just such a great read. I absolutely love this book so much. And my last reread was to reread Inkheart by Cornelia Funke, I believe, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and it was just amazing to re-engage in this world. I'm actually almost done rereading the sequel to this, Inkspell, and loving it even more. So definitely like one that has held up since my childhood. You know, Percy Jackson, like I said, didn't really, but this one definitely did. And I think if you've never read it and you are at least sort of interested in middle grade, definitely give it a try, because I think it can hold up for people of all ages. It's just magical and whimsical and beautiful, and I just recommend it to everybody. I think it's going to be a new favorite of all time, which I kind of always considered it that, but because I didn't remember it very well, I couldn't quite say it was a favorite of all time. But on this reread, I'm quickly realizing, yes, this is a favorite series of all time, and I think it's going to stay like that for probably my whole life, because I feel like there's characters in here in that book that you can connect with regardless of your age. A lot of them are older people. In fact, there's a grandma in it, there are middle-aged parents in it, so you're able to get a variety of different ages, and I think that's really helpful for connecting with people of a variety of different backgrounds and ages. So anyway, I love it, and I'm so excited to continue with the series. And my last and probably my biggest goal was to read 25 classics in 2020 for #Classics Community, hosted by Lucy at Lucy the Reader. And I ended up meeting that goal. I ended up at this point having read 28 classics. And actually by the end of the year, I should hopefully be able to get to 31 because I have Julius Caesar, like I mentioned. I also am currently almost done with The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. And then I plan on reading before the end of December, Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. So I should end up with 31 classics, 6 more than I originally planned and hoped for, and that is just amazing. I'm so proud of myself. And that's almost half the books I read in 2020 were classics, which is huge for me. That's like so amazing. I was not expecting to be able to do that, and I'm just so excited that I'm starting to really get into classics more. It's something I've wanted to do my whole life, and I'm starting to really just fall in love with them, and it's becoming more and more easy to pick one up on a whim rather than feeling like I have to plan for it like I used to. So, as I mentioned in my mid-year check-in, I discussed all the books I read in the first half of the year, so I will leave that there, and we're just going to start with July onwards as far as the classics I was able to read and what my ratings of them were. I have Goodreads pulled up to help me remember everything that I read so that we're not missing anything. Okay, so I believe the last one I mentioned in my mid-year check-in that I had completed at that point was Lady Audley's Secret. So the next one I ended up completing was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, and I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. Next, I read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Oh, I always butcher that name, but I ended up giving that one 4 out of 5 stars as well. Then I read The Trumpet Major by Thomas Hardy, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely a new favorite Hardy of mine. I then read Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton, which I ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars. Didn't love that one as much, but it was a very well written short story. For how short it was, I felt like it did a really good job keeping up the plot and having a full length plot and fully developed characters. It just didn't quite work for me. Then I already mentioned both The Count of Monte Cristo, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars, and Atlas Shrugged, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. After that, I ended up picking up Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Really, really loved it. Then I picked up Shirley by Charlotte Brontë, which I unfortunately only gave 2 out of 5 stars. That was followed by Ruth by Elizabeth Gaskell, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars, and The Odd Woman by George Gissing, which I also gave 4 out of 5 stars. I then completed A Pair of Blue Eyes by Thomas Hardy, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Unfortunately, probably my least favorite Hardy of the year, and one of my least favorite Hardys of all time. It just wasn't quite what I wanted it to be, but it was fine. And then I read The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars, another new favorite of the year. And that was it for the second half of the year. Like I mentioned, I have 3 more that I'll be completing for December, so I will mention those in my December wrap-up if you're curious about my thoughts on those. I'm really excited to get there, and yeah, so this was a really successful year, I feel like, as far as reading goals go. I'm really excited for the goals I have planned for 2021, so that video should be going up Monday, hopefully, if I'm able to get my crap together. This week I'm doing my finals. At this point, I'm filming this on Monday. You should be seeing it on Friday. And I only have 1 more test at this point. I just barely took a test that unfortunately didn't go the way I wanted it to, which is why I decided to film, because it always cheers me up. And then I have one on Wednesday that I'm hoping will go pretty well, so wish me luck. I mean, you'll be seeing this after I'll already take it, but you know, I'm a believer in it counting back in time, you know what I'm saying? Like, time is a construct. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know how your goals are going down below. Also, if you've read any of the books I've mentioned and your thoughts on them, as I'd love to know. And if you've read any, especially the 3 that I'm reading this month, so Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell, The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo, and or Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare. If you've read any of those, please let me know what your thoughts were on those, since they're a little more recent for me. And yeah, thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!